Deputy Pearse, Doherty, please.
I can't call you, and I want to welcome Trim's Men's Shed, who's with us in the gallery today, and commend all the men's sheds across the state for their work that they're doing. I can call you because I can't show me all the yellow show hatte to reti she ush mortgage to media she were a bank canis na Europe agus ta komme eigen there the high bank canis na Europe na reti shorish and chart and sugar ruddy healing gemein the milti ebrani agus chili igil na kete euro brushu and nine the mise are in causes of one in la gina honyat as skin a good clignia gumprejulation arm shot and neri. In ye dalshi bank canish na heran and a vasnu an chunker a vase ignaherdi reti shaw are highly le morgashi because for is a ma go will fee fangate that you should have will morgash a yilaku a van go to the jail kere vila arcade a gashaska euro ni smo and ish a morgashi a gumprajla ul me and neri a henish de kahi and realtas fuishu ush mortgage or jagas kai should shaw yenu gan wool. Since July of last year, the European Central Bank has increased mortgage rates 6 times, and it's anticipated that the ECB, when they meet this day next week, will increase rates again, meaning that tens of thousands of workers and families are paying hundreds of euro extra per month compared to where they were last year in the effort to keep a roof over their heads. And for those with even a modest mortgage, this can equate to thousands of euro extra per year. And this is on top, as you know, Taoiseach, of a cost of living crisis that, mortgages aside, is putting real pressure, real financial pressure on households. And for those whose mortgages have been sold to vulture funds, a policy which your party in opposition facilitated, the situation is unbearable for many. A mortgage holder contacted me recently whose mortgages was sold to Pepper. Her interest rate has increased from 4.5% to 8%. And her mortgage repayments have increased by €300 per month. That's over €3,500 per year. Now, with this income shock, she is terrified. She's terrified of having to cut back on her payments and falling into mortgage arrears. Another individual, a borrower, contacted me whose mortgage was sold by Permanent TSB to a vulture fund. And she has seen her repayments increase by €523 per month. That's over €6,000 that she has to find, Taoiseach. That's the increase. And these are not isolated cases. Yesterday, the Central Bank published its assessment of the impact of rate increases on mortgage holders. It found that 20% of all mortgage holders are paying on average €4,860 more on servicing their mortgage compared to July of last year. Now, Taoiseach, that is an impossible sum for many, many families to make up, and arrears are going to increase as a result. But despite the Central Bank pointing out in the report that 20% of all mortgage holders are seeing a 50% increase in the cost of servicing the mortgage, the solution from you, from your government, has been to do nothing. And this is despite the fact that Fianna Fáil campaigned to maintain mortgage interest relief when they were in opposition. Now, Sinn Féin has a proposal to introduce mortgage interest relief that will absorb a portion of the borrower's increased interest costs, benefiting families up to €1,500. As with every measure to combat the cost of living crisis, the state can't cover the entire cost, but it can help. It can lend a helping hand. And the reality is that tens of thousands of workers and families need support. So you should support Sinn Féin's proposal, and mortgage interest relief should be introduced without delay. But last night, you, your party and your government colleagues voted just against that. So I ask you today, Taoiseach, what are you going to do? What policy actions are you going to take? What actions are you going to take to support those families who are under severe pressure as a dramatic increase in their mortgage costs?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, dús baile ní leon áras ach ó hasach na bliana agus ní slúthe ná sin tá morgaistí rátaí morgaistí ag ardú gus ní leon áras go bhfuil sin ag brú ar dhaoine agus ar haglaigh. Agus tása going faoi sin ach mar aon lei sin is léir gcéann rialtas annach chuid sa bhilíonn se chaite ó thaobh an costas marachtála de. Agus ó hasach an bhilíonn se chaite go dtí an lá tá nuam, tá annach chuid déanta going ó thaobh cabhar agus takeíocht do chóirt do dhaoine go hiomláin ó thaobh cuasaí cánacha a íslú mar hampla, níos má cabhar a chóirt do dhaoine ó heh séirfisí ón staid agus an costa a bhaineann le sinna íslú agus mar sin de agus sitá ón tugtadála ná fuaisibh fi le a chóirtanis a chóirtaisteach ribh an cána. The formulation of monetary policy in the first instance, as you know, is an independent matter for the ECB and the setting of official interest rates. So because of the inflationary spiral, the European Central Bank have responded to that by a series of interest rate increases. You know the government doesn't have any role in setting official interest rates, nor in setting the retail interest rates that the lenders may charge on their loans. Mortgage interest relief for principal private residences, as you know, was phased out on a gradual basis over a period from 2009 to 2020, and it cost more than 700 million in 2008. And prior to its curtailment and eventual abolition, the top two income deciles accounted for close to half of the tax foregone through tax relief. And as you know also, Deputy, the recent report of the Commission on Taxation and Welfare put forward no case or recommendation for the introduction of mortgage interest relief. And the average interest rate on new mortgages here was 2.9% in February compared to 3.3% across the Eurozone on average. Rates here on new mortgages are the third lowest in the Euro area. That doesn't mean, of course, that people are not being impacted by the very significant increases from the low levels that interest rates historically have been. People are being impacted. And I think we can't just look at it on an ad hoc measure alone in terms of our response to it. I think we do have to look at it in the broader context, as I said earlier, Oscailge, in terms of the cost of living measures that have already been provided, but also in the budgetary process. And our view is that the budgetary process is the most appropriate way to consider further action in respect of the cost of living challenge and in respect of those particularly under pressure from increased mortgage interest payments. I note that there was no mention at all of mortgage interest relief in Sinn Féin's pre-budget submission, which was published last September, even though the European Central Bank had already increased rates and there was a wide expectation of further rate increases, but you were silent on it on that occasion. And again, the Minister for Finance and senior officials met recently with providers in the non-bank sector to discuss mortgage interest rates, and he's engaged with the Central Bank in terms of his concerns about the impact of recent mortgage interest rise on borrowers and the potential this may have to increase mortgage arrears. And we will continue to work on that agenda also with the Central Bank. Overall, I think the government will look at this. We'll look at it in the context of the budget and the wider cost of living measures that we have introduced.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Taoiseach, yes, Deputy Doherty.
Taoiseach, these families need support now, and they need support from government. Yes, the ECB will set their rates independently, but government can act, and the mortgage interest relief was here right up until 2021, and your party campaigned for its extension. I give you examples of people now who are paying 8% interest rate. The Governing Council of the ECB are going to meet next Thursday. The decision that they will have is at what level interest rates are going to rise. They're going to rise further. The Central Bank has told you the impact of citizens here in this state, and they have said that 20% of all mortgage holders are now paying 50% more to service their mortgage. That's close to €5,000, and that's based on where we're at now. That doesn't even factor in the increase that's going to happen next Thursday. Things are going to get worse for these families, and what do you tell them? We might consider this in October. These people are under massive pressure. The Central Bank outlined in their report that families are going to fall into arrears, and you decide to wash your hands and say nothing. Now, you voted against our proposal. I know what we would do. I know what Sinn Féin would do. We would introduce a targeted, tailored measure that would bring €1,500 of relief to them. What are you going to do for these families who are absolutely being penalised?
Deputy, the government has introduced over the last 12 months and before that unprecedented cost of living measures, unprecedented billions back into the pockets of households with a view to reducing the impact of cost of living. I remember your response to the energy crisis. Thanks be to God we didn't follow it. because the exact same proposal was adopted that you proposed here by the Liz Truss cabinet, which caused a huge crisis in the United Kingdom. The bottom line is this: we are very conscious and very aware of the pressures on people in respect of mortgage interest rate increases. We have intervened right across the board on a whole range of fronts to reduce costs in the first instance for people who are availing of public services, be the hospital inpatient charges, be the free books scheme coming in for primary level next September, be it, but all of these mortgage will also benefit from these measures that we've introduced. But when you're looking at a taxation measure like this, and given that, and you'd have been supportive of that in the past, that a reorientation of taxation policy and reliefs to target them more. That's been a consensual view for quite some time, but I've no doubt that you will always develop an ad hoc policy for the moment, for the topic of today. We will have to deal.
Thank you.
You stand up for everybody.
No, Deputy.